Hello, I'm Leah Wentworth. I'm Youth Services Librarian at McCracken County Public Library, and today we're going to make little owl friends. You have, hopefully you have the kit that we made to give out for this, so you can follow along with the pieces we've cut out. What we have are different circles, a purple shape, two green owl shapes. You should have two buttons and the four circles for the eyes and a little nose beak piece that's a little orange triangle. So the first thing to do to design your owl is to start placing the pieces. The purple goes on top of the green piece like this, so that you have your sort of owl belly shape, and then the circles go, the big circles go on top of that where the eyes will be, and then the big darker circles, and then you should have two white circles, those go on top of that, and then you have some buttons that are going to go in the middle there. You also have some glue dots to use, and you're going to use your glue dots to set these in place. We're also going to sew them in place because you have a sewing kit. But you want to glue these together so that you can pick it up and move it around and start sewing it without having all the pieces move off or disarrange. So if you haven't used a glue dot before, you peel it off of the paper and then you have a glue dot on your finger. And I'm going to put one under here, under this circle, and it will kind of, it's on the edge, so it's going to hold the purple shape and the brown eye shape in place there. And then I'll have to put another one under the white circle. They want to stick to your fingers. There's that. Make sure you probably don't want your felt shapes to stick out over the edges. You want the green, everything to be sort of on top of the green. If it doesn't quite fit, like the purple kind of sticks out a little bit here, I might need some scissors to trim that little piece off so that it's smooth there. Make sure to put the eyes how you want them. I guess if you put the circle shapes, the white circles off to the side a little bit, you can have your owlie doing side eye. You don't want to make him cross-eyed. If you put them both in towards the middle, he might look a little cross-eyed, but, or maybe you do, I don't know. So now that I've used 4 glue dots and I've got these shapes sort of glued together with them. And I might have to trim this little corner down here. I'm going to do that. There's little scissors in my sewing kit, but I also have some fabric scissors that I like to use that are better. I think these little scissors in the sewing kit will be fine to cut your thread though. So now that you have this, and you also should still have your 2 buttons for to sew onto the eyes and your nose shape. We're going to start sewing. So open your sewing kit that came in your kit bag for this So Fun Owls craft. And there's a bunch of pieces in here, so you might want a little box or bag to put all these pieces in. You have a whole bunch of different thread spools, so you can choose different colors for this project. You only have 1 needle, so you have to be careful not to lose this, and it is pointy and sharp, so you're going to be careful with your needle. I don't know if you can even see it, because if you drop this, it can be difficult to find, and you sure don't want to step on a needle. And let's see, there's some safety pins in here. I'm going to use, I think, this bright green thread because I like a contrast and it kind of matches the eyes. but you can use any color. You could use the black or the white. You could use several colors, and you have to find the end of the thread. It's tucked into the top. I don't know if you can see this. It's tucked into the top there of the spool. There's a little notch where the thread is stuck down in it, and it's going to be difficult to get out of there for me. I'm going to unwind the thread. It wants to stick in that little notch in the top again. So I usually do about an arm length. Nope. Just one arm length. If you do too long of a thread, then it'll be more likely to tangle. And I'm going to use let's see, with these tiny scissors. Oh, they're a little hard to open, but they will cut the thread. And now I'm going to thread my needle, which I always have to wet the end of the thread so that it doesn't have any little stray fuzz on the end where it was cut. And it should be pretty easy to get through the eye of the needle, but that might be the hard part for some people. I'm wearing my glasses so I can see to do this. And then you need to tie a knot at the end. I have threaded the needle and I have doubled the thread so the needle is hanging at the bottom, and I'm going to tie a knot down here at the end. And I'm going to do it again so that the knot is big enough to keep it from pulling right through the fabric. You might need to do 2 knots. Sometimes it's hard to get them on the same spot. Or 3 knots. Okay, there, I think I've got it. And now, so I've got these shapes glued together so that I can pick them up and move them around. Now you're going to sew, the first thing you're going to do is sew the button into the middle of the eye. So you want to go from the back through the front, and you want to get your needle to come out through the button. So you're aiming for the buttonhole. That might take some wiggling around and figuring out. So I've got so I've got several layers to go through there. Got it through that. Now I've got it through the button, and I'm going to push it through, and it's a little hard to get it through there. That is, so it should stop there where I have the knot. It's going to keep the thread from going all the way through. And I've gone through the button, and now I'm going to go back down through the button. So make sure you have it just how you want it. So it's, if you want it to the side so that your owl is looking to the side, make sure it's right in the right place. And pull it back through. And you want to do that at least twice. You want to, there are 4 little holes in these buttons, and some buttons might be different, but I want to do a loop through that so that the thread goes through all 4 holes. So I've done 2 of them so far. Now I've got to get through. The second one might be harder than the first because the button's already in place. That's what this, you have a thimble in your kit, and that might be helpful here. That is for pushing. For me, it's better to just use my thumbnail or my finger or the table. It's hard to control with the thimble, but that's what the thimble is made for, is for pushing the needle through your fabric. So now I've got the thread through all 4 holes on the button, and my owlie, the first eye, is set so it's kind of looking to the side. So now I've got to tie off the thread on the back. So this is what the back looks like. And I'm going to take the needle and go under the stitch I made to tie a knot. I go under the stitch And then I take the needle and go through the loop that I've just made and pull that tight, and that makes a knot. And then I do that twice for good measure. So I go back under the stitch I've made and then put the needle through the knot. So some of you might be sewing pros, some of you this might be your first time, so I wanted to show how I tie that knot. And now that I've done that twice, gone through the stitch and then through the loop I made and pulled it tight, now I can cut the thread off. And I'll have to tie a knot in the thread again so I can do the second button. So now I have my eyes and the purple centerpiece sewed through the buttons so that those are sewn onto the front of this piece. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on my little beak, and I'm going to continue using the light green thread because I like the contrast, but if you might want to choose a different contrasting color or the same color. My thread is getting shorter. I started out with about an arm's length, and now I've sewn the 2 buttons, and now it's down to here, but I think that's enough for the nose. You want to leave and make sure to leave enough though so that you can tie your knots at the end. So it's getting down to where you might want to consider just getting a new thread so you have plenty of thread to work with. Tie a knot again in the thread, and I'm just going to do a couple stitches across the top. I'm going to lay the beak on there where I want it, and I'm going to come from behind again so that all the extra string and the knot stays on the back of the owlie I'm making. And I'm going to come through on the top there, and I'm just going to do a couple stitches, which you might not even see. This felt is pretty thick, so the thread kind of disappears in there. You need at least 2 stitches to hold this on. You can do more if you want, but I think 2 is fine with me. It actually looks like a little accent on the top of the beak, very beak-like with 2 little dots at the top. And then I'm going to do my knot on the back again, same way, going through my stitch. If you can't find your stitch because it's sunk down into the felt, you can just take a little bit of the felt and go through that, but then make sure to go back through your loop before you pull it tight, and then you'll have a good stitch to go through, and then back through the loop you made, pull it tight. So now that I have sewed all of the shapes onto my owl front, now it's time to sew your owl front to your owl back. And you're just going to line these up like so. If there's extra, that might be okay. If you need to trim one, you can, but it might be okay if there's a little bit sticking out. But we're going to sew around the edges of this. So I definitely need more thread, although I think I am going to stick with my light green thread that I really like. You could also choose any other contrasting color, would look cool, I think. Or you could use the darker color. There's dark blue and there's black. Or even dark purple might not stand out as much. But I like contrasting thread. I got it. So I threaded the needle again. And now I'm going to tie a knot at the bottom of the thread. Get those lined up even. Tie a knot. Tie the knot, I make a loop like that, and then I put the end through. And do that again. Get it tied up. So you're going to sew this around the edges, but leave, let's start down here at the bottom at the edge of the purple. Actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the needle inside, in between, and then come out the back so that my little thread knot is inside. Oh, my knot's not big enough to hold it. I'm going to have to tie another knot, make that knot bigger. Let's see how to do it. Yeah. So now the thread I'm going to tuck inside there so that I can sew and have that knot stay inside the two pieces. And I'm going to sew around the edge, and I'm going to stop when I get over here, because you should also have a little piece of fluff. And we've got to stuff that inside there when we've got it almost all the way sewed around. So to sew around the edges, I'm going to, because I like the contrasting thread and I don't mind the way it looks, I'm going to actually go, I have the thread started at the back there, but then I'm going to go around to the front. So you want to stay near the edge and go like that. So the thread is actually around the outside of the edge. And this is an easy stitch to do. You could also, so I'm making loops pretty much, and it's going to look like that. I'm going to go all the way around the outside like this. Uh-oh, I'm realizing that my thread is getting a little short. I don't want to sew to the very end of it and then not have room to tie a knot, a good knot with it. So I'm just made it around up to here to the second ear, and I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot, but I'm going to open up the owl a little bit and tie the knot on the inside. Back through the loop, I got my stitch, and then I'm going back through the loop. Keep that knot on the inside. It wants to get caught on the edge. So I've learned to pull slowly when I'm tying a knot, because sometimes it can get caught in a way or tangle the thread. And there, I've got my knot tied on the inside there. I always do it twice though, for good measure. So now I'm going to have to put more thread on and finish sewing around the outside. Okay, so I've gone around the outside, and I did have to trim a little bit off of the front so that the two pieces lined up better. And now I have left a little gap. Oop, I started getting tangled at the bottom where I can put in the stuffing. So I'm going to push that in there. So it doesn't take much, just a little to give dimension. I'm going to squish that around a little. And now I'm going to finish sewing the bottom. It's easy to get your thread tangled. You have to make sure that you are not going through your loop when you're doing this sewing, because that will change the way the stitch looks. and it's nice to try to make even stitches so they're the same distance apart. Although, oh, wants to tangle a little bit. Sometimes, oh, I think my thread just broke. I was almost to the end too. So I'm going to have to tie that. No, it didn't break, it just tangled a little bit. Let's see. I think I'm going to have to try to tie this off and get a little bit of thread for the last little part. If you have to tie a knot on the outside, it's not ideal, but you can just trim the string as short as you can without cutting your knot off. So now I've got a little knot there, a little string, but that's okay. It's not going to bother me. It's on the back of it. And I need to make a new thread just for that last little, I think I just need 3 more stitches to finish right there on the edge. But my owlie is looking pretty cute, I think. It's a little stuffed owlie friend. Okay, so now my stitches go all the way around. My owlie is all sewed up, and I'm just going to tie one more knot here on the bottom. I'm going to do it on the back, pull through slowly through my last stitch, and then go through the loop made with the thread. Do that twice. And then just cut the thread. You want to cut so you don't have a long string hanging off, but you don't want to cut your knot. So make sure you cut close, but you can leave a little tiny thread hanging off there in the back. And you won't see it from the front. And my stitches aren't 100% even, but I still think I've made a cute little owl friend. And I hope you did too.